It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Yo, yo, yo! Today is March 10th. It's Friday, thank goodness. And we are about to dig into the Canadian headlines with hot takes from yours truly. Let's get over here. Ontario has banned TikTok on government issued devices. This is a bit of a surprise, I guess. It's a trend that's been happening in the US and now it's affected Canada. It was at the federal level and now it has affected all the provinces. And Ontario is the last to announce its decision. The Ontario government will also immediately remove its advertising campaigns from the platform. Now, this is only affecting people who are on government issued devices. Obviously, if you're a regular Canadian citizen, you can still use TikTok, where you can follow me, my homie Tutaro, where I post the daily headlines every day in order to get people to right here to YouTube or Twitch. And so for the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus, they're not even allowed to have it on their personal mobile devices. So that is something they're taking a harder line against the Chinese owned TikTok company. Why? Because I don't know. Conservatives are positioning themselves to be really tough on China, which actually makes me really worried because this is a narrative that is becoming very common in the media. And for me personally, I want to see relationships improve between Canada and China. However, the way things are going, that's not something that's going to happen. So, the government encourages Ontarians to review the terms and conditions of any application they use. So, everyone, please stop what you're doing, get into all your apps, read the terms and conditions, and then maybe you'll have a little bit of peace of mind once you've read all of those terms and conditions that we usually just press okay. Please just let me use the app. Damn it. So I don't know what they actually expect to happen from this, but okay, read the terms and conditions. Treasury Board President Mona Fortier is saying that the decision to remove and block TikTok was made because of concerns about the legal regime that governs the information collected from mobile devices. So, saying pretty much straight up that it has nothing to do with the app, it actually just has to do with the regime, aka China, where the app is based out of. So, a coalition of Canadian privacy protection authorities, including the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, recently announced it is investigating TikTok. That investigation will determine whether TikTok's practices are in compliance with Canada's privacy laws. So, the reason I highlighted this was just because, you know what? They never do this. They never act and then do the study. They usually are like, hey, should we defund the police? Even though we know that they don't, solve any crimes or prevent any crimes. And, there's a lot of data already that says that they are like racist and misogynistic, and our money would be better spent on social services to keep people out of poverty. Should we do that? I don't know. Maybe we should do a study, and we'll do a study about all of the studies that have already been done, and then we'll never do anything. But in this case, which is kind of interesting, they're taking action, removing TikTok from all government issued devices, and then doing the study. So that is not usually how these things go down, but they are taking swift action. In response, TikTok has said, a representative has said, all it does is prevent officials from reaching the public on a platform loved by millions of Canadians. We continue to be ready and available to meet with our government officials to discuss how we prioritize, protect, and uphold the privacy and security of Canadians. So, it is true. Do I need to see Jugmeet Singh on TikTok? Not really. I don't really care to follow them on that platform anyways. I don't even follow them on the platforms I do have, but I still get their information when I want it. Um, and the kind of foolish part about all of this is that Google, Facebook, Amazon, everyone else, they are still going to sell your data to China. Like, I mean, why wouldn't they? That is their whole business. And you think that these corporations who have money on their mind are going to keep our best interests at heart when our own government can't even really do that. I don't think so. So this, to me, the whole TikTok thing, it reeks of xenophobia in my books. Governor General Mary Simon on the abuse women endure online and why she's speaking out. So yes, our Governor General, who is the first Indigenous Governor General of Canada, an Inuk woman, is posting about a torrent of racist and misogynistic abuse that she has received online. Some things that are super vitriolic, like "go back to the reserve." So obviously very racist. It's like, I don't even know what to say about that. It's so disgusting. Like imagine being like a white person in Canada telling Native folks to go back to their home. It's like, bruh, you destroyed their home. Like, so like what do you even expect to do? So really disgusting. However, I do have kind of like mixed feelings about airing all of this publicly. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine because unfortunately, when you choose to be a public figure, you are opening yourselves up to something like this. And I think I prefer the method of just like trying to like ignore it instead of publicizing the things that people say. In a way, it's kind of creating a competition for then people to say the most vitriolic things, and with the hopes that the person that you're sending them to might even like publish them one day. So I have a bit of a mixed feeling about this tactic. However, I do totally agree that the abuse that women and girls, especially Indigenous women, have to endure in Canada is an important topic and it needs to be highlighted. I guess the Governor General, in a way, is a symbolic position, so it's maybe not unusual for them to be taking symbolic actions like this. Um, they are saying here that I am all for constructive criticism. I've lived with it all my career. Mary Simon said, doing it diplomatically is one thing, but to throw insults in your face through social media is not productive. And I mean, that's, again, we know this is something that's not productive. I don't really like when people weaponize the abuse that they're facing, because in its own way it can distract from the issues. For example, if I were to receive that as a, now I'm choosing to be like an online figure, I don't think it would be necessarily productive for me to just like air those things. And unfortunately, that is a part of the reality we live in. However, I do think something should be done. And obviously this is different for women and racialized folks. So I do hope that something can be done. And there was a meeting for International Women's Day, where people from around the world met, and one of those people was Adriana Solano Lacle of Costa Rica, who explained that last year her country passed a law making it a criminal offense to make misogynistic insults and threats towards women in politics, including candidates, on social media. And I think that is a good bar to set, because we know it's really difficult to be a woman in politics, and this is substantial action. This isn't just like, hey, look at these horrible things I got in my inbox. This is like, nope, we're gonna actually crack down on this, and being misogynistic online, it's not going to be tolerated, and maybe holding sites accountable as well. I mean, like, Twitter TOS is horrible, but maybe if it was the law in Canada to not be allowed to say those things, it could get rid of them, and there could be consequences for these things. The Governor General says she doesn't think you'll ever get rid of online hate, so she's not naively approaching it from that sense. But people need to talk about what we can do to curb it. And yeah, I do agree. RCMP under scrutiny for enforcement of injunctions against protesters. So this is some potentially exciting development, although I am pretty skeptical about the results of these studies, or the actionable consequences as a result of things like this. But they have received hundreds of complaints of unlawful arrest, use of force, and other allegations. Now, this is the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, the CRCC, who has announced it is launching an investigation into the Mounties' handling of years of protests against large-scale pipeline and logging projects at BC sites such as Fairy Creek, Salisbury Creek Forestry Road, and the Wet'suwet'en Traditional Territory. So it is great that these are being investigated. However, these things tend to be very much like internal, and again, I don't know what the consequences will be. Kate McDerby, a spokeswoman for the Complaints Commission, is speaking to this. While the CRCC frequently probes complaints from individuals about Mounties. It launches systemic investigations much more rarely. And yeah, that is usually the problem that I have as well, is that they usually look at individual cases and then there's consequences or usually none for the officers. But we need to be changing the system as a whole. So maybe this is an attempt to do that. This month, lawyers representing two journalists announced they were suing the federal government for the RCMP's handling of the BC protest. In a lawsuit filed in BC Supreme Court, they allege that the federally run Mounties have chilled media coverage by imposing no-go zones and by making hundreds of arbitrary arrests. So we definitely know that was something that happened during the Wet'suwet'en traditional land when some journalists were arrested, and they're saying, yeah, like they shouldn't be allowed to make arbitrary arrests because those then become political arrests, and there's really no justification unless those people are being charged as to why they should be arrested. The other factors the commission says it will be considering are whether the unit's operations and actions reflect the federal and BC government's implementation of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples and calls for justice from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. However, this should be warned here that systemic reviews of this nature usually take between 1 and 2 years. So this is not going to be something that's going to happen quickly. As I said before, it's interesting to see how quickly they're moving on TikTok without studies or reviews or whatever, panel discussions and ongoing consultations. But for something like this with the police, this is going to take 1 or 2 years. And what's going to be the result? The actionable consequences, probably like a very minor reform, no gigantic systemic sweeping changes, no defunding the police, but this will take several years. So interesting to see in that sense. In more RCMP news, they are investigating alleged Chinese police stations in the Montreal area. Now, I always get confused by this. Chinese police stations, like you always think to yourself, how can there be Chinese police in Canada? Because they would have no authority to be operating like this. So I'm confused. It's something I probably need to learn more about because the language can be misleading. But the RCMP's Integrated National Security Enforcement Team, yada yada yada, is investigating 2 clandestine police stations in Quebec, the force said on Thursday. Now, clandestine has been a word that's been thrown around a lot lately. Basically, I think it just means like secretive. So it's like a secret police station. The alleged locations are the Service à la Famille Chinois du Grand Montréal in the city's Chinatown neighborhood and the Centre Sino-Quebec de la Rive Sud in the municipality of Brossard. Sergeant Charles Poirier of the RCMP confirmed. The Journal of Montreal first reported the investigation on Thursday. Please don't judge me for my French. Both institutions offer integration and support services to the Chinese community in Quebec, according to their websites, including French language classes for newcomers and home visits for elders. So obviously it doesn't sound that bad when you hear about it like this. But yeah, as Bojam here in chat is saying, they have authority from Beijing. Exactly. So it's not that they have authority like to be the police in Canada, but they have authority to police people of the Chinese diaspora in Canada on behalf of Beijing. So obviously that is not a good thing. Intimidating and bullying Chinese nationals are one of the goals, as Bojam is also clarifying in chat. Yes, thank you so much. This is why I love doing this as a community, because I'm not an omnipotent source of news. So thank you so much. The group says the stations serve to persuade people who Chinese authorities claim are fugitives living overseas to return to China to face charges. So yeah, obviously this is a problem and something that should be a concern to Canadians. If you're here from another country, you should have the freedom to not be policed. by the forces that are back in your country of origin. So, yeah, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said last year Ottawa is prepared to consult Canadians on the possibility of creating a registry to document who is potentially a foreign influence. So, this is probably one of the only consequences that is going to result of all of these I would say like anti-China news stories that we're seeing, is that we will have a foreign influence registry. It's on mostly for China and Russia, but I think it should also apply to the United States. In more news about China, Chinese President Xi has secured a third term as tensions with the West heat up. So, I guess this is important, of course, because every day now we are basically updating ourselves on the war with China, you could say, or the war with China and Russia, or the Third World War, you might want to say. But I guess we're not quite there yet. We were talking to someone yesterday who referred to it as the lukewarm war. Like, it's not quite a Cold War. We are fighting in Ukraine, in even as a proxy war. So it's not quite a Cold War, but it's a lukewarm war. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has officially secured a third term as president after a unanimous vote by the 2,977 strong National People's Congress, China's rubber stamp parliament. So this is a historic third term. Typically, I guess, in China, they only serve 2 terms as general secretary of the Communist Party. The real takeaway from this is, of course, at least that we want to know in Canada, is how it's going to affect our relationship. So, speaking this week, Mr. Xi accused Western countries, led by the US, of having implemented the all-around containment, encirclement, and suppression of China, which has brought unprecedented, severe challenges to our country's development. In the coming period, the risks and challenges that China is facing, will only become more and more numerous and grim. Mr. Xi said, telling officials they should brace for further quote-unquote struggle. So this is this is concerning because what are they trying to say? We don't really know. This could be alluding to, like, tensions, war. After the MPC confirmed a 7.2% increase in military spending, Mr. Xi on Thursday called for more quickly elevating the armed forces to world-class standards. There you have it. Western politicians have warned of potential conflict over the self-ruled island of Taiwan as the People's Liberation Army builds up its capabilities and cross-strait military balances becomes increasingly skewed. If ties between Beijing and Washington are frayed, those between China and Canada seem at risk of breaking completely. And that is pretty much the feeling that we already have. The funny part about this, right, is that everyone is trying to paint Justin Trudeau right now as someone who is in the pocket of China, and at the same time, these relationships are at an all-time low, and we're basically on the brink of severing ties completely. If not for economic reasons, I think we probably already would have done so. So I don't know. Somehow Trudeau is the puppet of China, but also China hates Trudeau. So it's interesting, and it does kind of feel that we are getting the I don't know, the worst of both sides as relationships between China and the US, and by extension China and Canada, deteriorate. This is a bad thing overall for us here in Canada. I wish there was someone in the media who was like, "Hey, you know what would be great? If we didn't have tensions with China, if we were trying to repair this relationship, if we weren't trying to fearmonger about them being communist, like our newest chatter is potentially doing." Because I am a socialist, which is just another word for a communist here on this channel. But I don't, obviously not the authoritarian type of communism that China represents right now. So I believe in socialism in so much that it is democratic. Ottawa warns provinces of healthcare funding cuts if fees for medically necessary services continue. So this is, I guess, a good thing, because Ottawa, of course, has committed to more money through the federal health transfer, more money for the provinces. But it is also here kind of like being like, hey, watch out if you cut some public services, then we're going to claw that money back. However, as we might learn about in a moment, they might not have the kind of necessary tools to be able to do that. So the federal government has issued a warning to provinces and territories that it intends to reduce the funding they receive through federal health transfers if they continue to allow private companies to charge patients for medically necessary health services, including virtual care. And it is also moving forward with separate reductions in health transfers to provinces that permitted people to be charged for diagnostic services such as ultrasounds, MRIs, and CT scans, services Ottawa says should be accessible at no cost to patients. So I think this is good news. However, as I said, they might not have the authority to actually surveil this, and it will be very hard to scrape back the money once the damage is already done. So this is Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos saying he's very concerned about the new emergence of out-of-pocket fees, where instances of patient charges for these services are present. I will pursue a reduction in federal health transfers by an equivalent amount as authorized by the Canada Health Act. However, so my concern here is that it's just an equivalent amount. In my opinion, if you spend $100 privatizing healthcare, you should claw back more than the equivalent amount, because there's still a risk here that, like, Ontario, the government of Ontario could, for example, could just allocate funds into the private sector, and the government would also have to then pay back that money to the federal government. So if they want to distribute money to their friends in the private sector, they can still do so. And whose money is it? It's our money. And so not only will we have to pay the private sector, we'll also have to pay the federal government back. So it's kind of like a lose-lose for taxpayers. I wish there was more incentive. I wish there was more incentive for them to not privatize, just more than just a 1-to-1. Like if they had to pay like a 5-to-1, they might think twice about privatization. Canadians pay for their healthcare services through their tax dollars and should not be asked to pay again by way of patient charges when they need to access those services. Yep, yep, yep. Pretty much. So anyways, judge approves, this is our final story of the day. Judge approves $2.8 billion settlement between Ottawa for Indigenous Day scholars. Now, when we were going through this ahead of filming this segment, someone in chat pointed out that, what do you mean scholars? Like the people who were in residential schools and day schools, they are not scholars. They are survivors. They are victims of colonization and of genocide. So like, why refer to them in this very weak sense? It literally makes them sense like they got a scholarship to a university or something, but no, they are survivors. A federal court judge has approved a $2.8 billion settlement agreement between the Canadian government and plaintiffs representing 325 First Nations whose members went to residential day schools. Justice Anne-Marie McDonald said in her ruling issued Thursday that the settlement is intended to help take steps to reverse the losses of language, culture, and heritage through an Indigenous-led, not-for-profit body. As Canada remarked, the $2.8 billion settlement is not intended to put a value on the losses suffered by the band class members, as that is an impossible task. So I like that they are making this note here that there's no way to put a dollar amount on the losses suffered. And this is historic and transformational, according to Justice Anne-Marie McDonald, adding that the settlement does not release the federal government from future lawsuits related to children who died or disappeared at residential schools. So I think that is a really important note here, that this is a $2.8 billion settlement, which is great, but is it enough money? Probably not. And this does not close the doors for people to seek future compensation. The lawsuit was originally brought forth by two BC First Nations, the Tecumloops de Secwepemc. I'll have to learn how to pronounce that word. And the Shishal. more than a decade ago for members who were ineligible for the 2006 settlement reached between Canada and full-time students. Again, here calling them students at the schools. So very, very strange way to kind of categorize this. The settlement now goes into an appeal period, after which the money would be transferred to a not-for-profit fund managed by a board of Indigenous leaders. Affected Indigenous communities will each get to decide what to do with their settlement funds based on the 4 pillars principles outlined in the agreement: the revival and protection of Indigenous language, the revival and protection of Indigenous culture, the protection and promotion of heritage, and the wellness of Indigenous communities and their members. Justice McDonald's decision also said that the funds and their proceeds cannot be used to fund individuals or commercial ventures, be used as collateral to secure loans or as a guarantee. So those are some of the stipulations there of this ruling. It's weird to me that it is still going to an appeal, and I believe the federal government was appealing this ruling, and really, when we think about it, the $2.8 billion, it's not really enough. I know personally from being from my own family members who were interned during World War II that they each received $10,000 for basically all of their losses that they occurred during that time. And if you really think about it, like, they lost their houses, their cars, their everything. If they were able to hold on to that land, imagine what it would be worth today. It's a hell of a lot. So if you think about $2.8 billion distributed across all of Turtle Island, it's really not that much money. So I hope that the federal government is willing to settle up and not appeal this in a aggressive way, and that these settlements actually continue on in our reconciliation with the First Nations folks of Canada and Turtle Island. Thank you so much for tuning into the news. Thank you so much to our mods for keeping us safe during this time, and I really appreciate everyone being here. The question of the day is what is your favorite winter activity? Winter is almost over, but I am wondering if you like any winter sports or outdoor activities. Which ones are your favorite? Please comment below. Please like and subscribe. Every little thing helps this channel grow, and we're almost at 250 followers on YouTube. I really appreciate that. All right, peace out, everyone. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday morning.